Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the known world. I am Countess Lilia bint Tazir, and tonight my co-host is Duchess Altani. There's probably a more culturally appropriate title for you. And we are here today to actually chat to a close friend of both of ours, Sir Gregory of Lochswan, who's been nice enough to volunteer to be interviewed. So before we start our interviews, we always acknowledge our First Nation people. So just one moment, please, while I read the appropriate wording. And if I stumble, I do apologize. I didn't mean to offend anybody. So here we go. Good nobles, we come here together in the fellowship and deepening of our skills and the sharing of our knowledge and the shared interest in the search for truth through experimental archaeology and historical inquiry. It is in this context that I, Lilia bint Tazir, on behalf of my kingdom, acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we gather. We recognize their continuing connection to culture and land, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and to the elders of other communities that may come here today to watch this interview. Thank you very much. Hello, Sir Gregory. How are you?
Great, thanks. How you going? Seems like only last week we met.
Yes. Yeah, Sir Gregory was up in my region last, so we had dinner together. It was lovely.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
That's my pleasure.
So when I asked you to do this, you first of all said that you were unsure of why I would want you to be.
Very much. Far more interesting people than me.
Yeah. Oh, well, there are, but I find you interesting as well. So that was part of the reason I went. I want to invite. All right, so great.
I think you'll have a wealth of knowledge that you could tell us.
Exactly.
Let's hope. Otherwise, it's going to be very boring.
So we start off every interview asking how you started in the SCA.
Okay, well, she started back in 1982. I got out of the army. I was living in Brisbane, and I got out of the army. I came back to Western Australia, and a person called Raynadine of Tara at that time decided that we were doing one-to-one D&D, which seems to be where science fiction crowd and most of our people came from in the West Coast. And he said, we're going to have this thing called the SCA. We're going to join it, and we're going to hit people. I said, yeah, we do that with little, foam batty type things. He said, no, this is getting into armor and really hitting people and whole stacks of stuff. And I went, okay, sounds good to me. So we went along to the first meeting in Anyala at Eamon Dame James de Hennessy's place in East Perth. And there was, I think, about 25 of us there. And we mucked around at the back hitting a pell. And we started to do up motorcycle helmets with leather banding because that was safer. And carpet armor, and we decided to start playing. So 1982 in Western Australia, that's where I started. I think it was the incipient Shire at that time of Anyala, or becoming the Shire of Anyala. That was what, because there was only one other group then. That was on the East Coast in Rowaney.
So was it much of a transition then from your military background to your SCA because of the, I suppose the combat mentality?
I think I was a lot fitter then, so it was a lot easier. But I think it just enthralled me because I've always been into military history, and it's particularly medieval and Civil War stuff. So the idea of actually experiencing putting full armor on and doing it rather than just watching it on TV, I really enjoyed it. So I've pretty much stuck with it ever since.
Oh.
So with that introduction, have you always maintained the same persona throughout, or have you changed?
It had a little change. Obviously, I was going to call myself Greg Turkic because on Anzac Day I changed my name from Turkic to Cameron, and so I decided that I would go with Jock Cameron of Lochswan because I've always had the Scottish thing. I played pipes in the army, so that's always been a thing with me. So it was Jock Cameron of Lochswan, and somehow over a couple of years that kept getting abbreviated to Jock of the Loch, and it was like. I just don't like the sound of that. So I changed it to Gregory of Lochswan because, people say Jock, and I'll be going, Gregory, oh, yeah, what? So I just changed it to Gregory of Lochswan, and that's where it stuck. And the Gregory is obviously my first name. and the Lochswan came from Swan River, which is a big loch, as in Scotland, and the Black Swan, which is because it's the Swan River, and black swans are unique to Western Australia.
And any particular time frame?
Sort of like about second, third Crusade-ish era, second son of a Scottish noble, and going off to make his way in life because he knows he's never going to be the kingpin because his brother's ahead of him. So he goes off to make his own way in life, and when he comes back from the Crusades, he sort of decides that there was a lot of bad things happen, so he's going to defend the weak and defend the righteous and make sure that people are taken care of. So that's pretty much my persona.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you have, because you've been playing for so long, you've actually gone through our history and been part of our principality as up to when we were part of the West, as well as to the kingdom. Have you found that the difference between the principality and the kingdom are very, like, how are you finding the difference between them? Because I know some people are going, oh, it was much more fun when we were a principality because we didn't have the responsibility of being a kingdom. And then we have other people who are going, but we're now our own adults, like, we're not the teenager of a kingdom anymore.
I think in the early days when we were just all separate baronies, and then we become a principality, it was very different to most of the mainland USA at that time, because you could travel like a few hours in the US apart from Alaska, and you're bumping into another group. There's no problems. And even with the kingdoms the way they are structured today, as we all know, you've both been over there, it's like you just bump into one another all the time to have an event in other kingdoms, just like, we can do that. This weekend we'll go. Australia's never been like that. And so we were very insular to start with. And I think the only way to really draw us together was to become a principality. And that was the initial phase. And that did draw us together. But it was, what Australians are like with people overseeing you. We have that little thing about we want independence, but we want to do it nicely. We don't want to have a war over it. We're quite happy to discuss it and talk about it and work it through. We're sort of like the UN of the SCA, and so we did. And over many years, I think people saw the benefit of it. The biggest problems, as I remember, was, we're going to have enough people to fill the offices. Well, of course we are, because the people at our principality are going to become kingdom officers. That's the difference, and we've had a try, I think, at a few principality ideas under the kingdom. It's never really got fire into it yet. I think it could happen, but not at the moment. And I think we do quite well as a kingdom in our own entity. I think, and I think it was important to bring New Zealand into that fold. And the reason I say that is because, New Zealand traditionally was almost another state in Australia. We all know that from reading the Constitution, right? And they wisely remained separate because it gave us someone to fight against and argue with. And so that what they've done by including them in our kingdom is sort of like said, well, you're not going to get any service from KED from the other side of the world, but you will get a better service from us. And although it's not always probably, the best that they'd want, I think it's pretty good.
So we're a louder broadband, basically.
Yeah. It's the Anzac tradition. We've pretty much done everything else together. Let's not fight together. Let's not fight overseas and in the SCA together as well. So
I posted this interview with your device on it.
Yep.
And you explained the swan and so forth, but the checkered pattern, what is this?
Okay, well, there's not many people know this. The swan actually came from the Swan Districts Football Club. If you have a look at their emblem, that's the swan in a really angry mode, displayed up like this, going So that was a swan, and of course I couldn't have that. I had to put something else under it. And initially I put waves under it, Swan River, Lochswan, and they said, "No, can't have that." And I went, okay, because somebody called Sanagwa had a swan that was very similar. So
we're interviewing them tomorrow morning.
so anyway, so they said you have to difference it, and I was mucking around because I was a police officer. I'd just become a police officer at that stage in the West Australian Police, and of course I got a checkered headband, and I thought, well, that looks really cool. I'll see if I can put the checkered headband on there. And I thought, nah, blue and white check headband. Nah, didn't really want that either. And I was flicking through some books doing some military history research, oddly enough, for painting some medieval figures. And I saw the Constable of the Tower of London had a checker company, counter company, gold and blue, which was also the colours I really like is gold and blue. And I went, great, that'll do it. I'll throw that on. And so I sent. So that was done up for me quickly because I can't draw stick people properly. Done up for me quickly and sent off. And they went, yeah, that's fine. Great. So that's where it comes from. Swan District Football Club and the Constable of the Tower of London.
I think it's really nice to actually hear how your devices come together and what it means to you. Like many of us go and choose things that we like, but you've actually got some history with those things.
Yeah, I used to play Colts, Australian rules football. My dad played for Swan Districts Football Club, which is our old club, so that was where that link always came from. Yeah, so
your personal heraldry has like a personal attachment, which I think everybody should really have a personal attachment to.
Yeah, in some way, it's got to have meaning, I think. I mean, and heaven knows, I've never selected an animal again if I was ever doing it. Oh my goodness, because I can't draw sick people properly, and it's a nightmare. Thank goodness I have talented people around me that can draw.
Now, you said you started out in Western Australia, and at the moment you're in our capital city.
Yep.
And I want to ask you about having a young son growing up in the SCA. Because I have a young daughter about to do fighting and doing stuff. So
I think we dressed him. We dressed him one time for a fete, and we got a little plastic helmet, the little ones you buy in the kits with a visor, and we dressed him in a little tea tunic with a cross on it, and off he went to school, and he loved it with his little sword, and he was coming around, and I was out the back doing some training on the Pell I had at the time, and he would start hitting my shield, and I went, okay, so we started playing around. It just sort of developed, and then he started coming along to events with me, and next minute he's saying, oh, when I'm old enough, Dad, I'm going to fight. And I'm going, okay, I think you're a little delicate for this, but let's see how it goes. And he's just progressed from there. He's gone on, and he actually fights. Well, he's taken a bit of a family life has got in the way, as it happens with people. You have a kid, and all of a sudden, bang, family's in the way.
Your life, yep.
Real life happens. So he's taken a bit of a backstep at the moment. But I used to say to him, we'd have a disagreement about something. Once he was authorised, we'd have a disagreement about something, and I'd say to him, okay, well, fine, let's go at the back. Best out of three is right. Okay, and he go, yeah, okay, right. So we go at the back and bang, 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 finish him off from that. And then all of a sudden he got better. And then he come out one day and said, come on, Dad, best out of three and see who's right. I said, well, son, violence doesn't solve anything. Yeah, no, he got better than me. That's so now I've got to really cheat to win.
So has it been hard balancing your SEA life and your mundane life? Because I know that you obviously, I've met your wife once. She's not a constant player, but she does turn up to events when you're comfortable. And like Jonathan's played, but he's now you have a grandson, which is
yes, right. And he's hitting things with sticks. It's great.
So was it hard when you were playing and you had a young family?
Look, I think the problem was that Steph worked shift work as a nurse. I worked shift work as a policeman. And then you have a family, and you've got to try and juggle all those things. So for like 2.5 years, I really just got out. I couldn't handle all of that, 2 young children and balancing shift work and everything like that. And the priority's always got to be your family, because as I tell people, family, work, and then the SCA, because if those first 2 aren't in line, you can't really do the third one. It doesn't fit. It'll cost. You can't afford to do it. So it's a real balancing act. Even now, I mean, I thought, great, kids off your hands, we're done. I can do what I like. It's like grandkids. Oh, it's like shift work still. It's like, and yeah. So I think it's always going to be a balancing act. And although I think some families where the whole family's involved in the SCA is great, and I think that's fantastic. Sometimes I like that break where I come home and my wife will say, well, we've got other things to do, because it really takes you away to do something different with other people, and you're sort of like, okay, yeah, we have a larger group outside of the SCA that I know as well. So it's good and relieving. Plus, Steph's a good check every now and then. I mean, she'll go, really, do you want to do that? Even now with Penzic stuff, it's like, you want to think about what you want to say in that regard and how you're going to say it? Okay. I will. So she's a good check and balance.
Yeah. So you've seen so much that has happened in this principality and now kingdom. What would be one of the most defining moments of you or that you've experienced?
I think going kingdom was definitely different. I mean, it was everyone knew it was going to be a big deal. I mean, and it was done very well. I mean, people that did the whole arranging for it was fantastic. I think the most defining point was, and I've told people this story a few times, and it's when we were actually when we were going from, we ceased to be part of the West Kingdom, and we were going to become part of Lochac, the New Kingdom, and all of us were out of fealty. And I know everybody says, oh, it's horrible for everyone to be out of fealty, and I get that, but actually taking their chain off as knights and taking it off, and I've never seen so many lost puppies in my life walking around with their chains in their hand going, what do I do now? I don't like this feeling. Somebody give this back to me, and it was really a strange feeling. It's being out of fealty to your kingdom for such a short period of time, but it just felt like I've never really been out of fealty to my kingdom the whole time. So, and I know everyone else that was in fealty felt the same way, but I think symbolically the knights taking that chain off is just that little bit different, So that was a pretty emotional and very special time, I think.
So that leads me to the question of the regalia that you're wearing. Can you tell us about it, please?
Chain was given to me at Penzic by Master Ruslan, who saw that I didn't have a chain and decided to get one for me, because I had given another one like this away to somebody else who didn't have a chain and didn't need to be not wearing one because they'd given it to somebody else who was getting knighted, and it seems to be a thing, as you do. And this one is sort of like multi-links. It's made up of, you probably can't see it really clearly. Let's take it off for a second. But it's made up of a whole stack of different links from all the different people when I got made a pelican, and they added their bits onto it, and even the Coopers added a link from their chain, from their fence onto it. So it was really cool. And that's when I treasure. It's normally got my pelican medallion on them, but like your nice chain, give them away to people when they ask for them. So I've got my alternate one on, which is nice little pelican got given to me in
beautiful.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Carved amber.
Yep, amber. Well, it's really nice. So so they're the two chains I've got. I've got like a battle chain and stuff I keep in the bag and things like that. But that's that regalia I wear at the moment. Plus my spurs, which I still have, my original ones sitting here that I was given.
Oh, they've got spinny wheels on them like real cowboy spurs.
Wow.
Yes, but not spikes, as I found out. You always sit back on your haunches. Not when you're wearing spikes, you don't. Do that mistake once. So
you were made a knight by the West, is that correct? While we were a principality.
Yes, I was. Yeah, by Viennaman.
Which kingdom made you a pelican?
Well, there is a little difference. Alpha and Elspeth actually technically made me a pelican, said yes, but it was done at Penzic by agreement with Megan and Jade, who decided they were going to do it before we became a kingdom, apparently. I didn't, because you don't know all this because you're not at Pelicans Council. But they decided yes. And then they said, well, how about you do him at Penzic where most of the people are? And they went, okay, so they said, yeah, that's fine. And like my knighting, it was a drive-by, so I never knew it was going to happen. And so they got to do it at Penzic at Great Court. And the story goes that it took so long with people talking and all the other kingdoms doing their bits of business that after my pelicaning at Great Court, they ceased having Great Court in the middle of Penzic. So some people are very thankful for that. So.
Oh, it's awesome. So I do apologize, Altani, if you have anything to ask, just wave.
That's all right.
So I can talk underwater.
I'm sure we could get onto Penzic at some point.
Well, that was where I was going. Your history of service not only is in Lochac, but also at Penzic. I want to know when you first went to Penzic and what was your first impression of it that led to you stepping up into the role of one of the people who supports and is on the team when you can be on the cutting team.
Okay, so my first Penzic was Penzic 19. I was on my way to a science fiction convention in the States. I thought, well, I've heard about this big event called Penzic, and apparently it goes over a week. So I'll pop in for the busy time. That'll be the weekend, and there'll be probably 1,500 people there. It'll be fantastic. And so I rocked up with my suitcase in one hand and one tea tunic and a pair of tracksuit pants and my sand shoes, and think that'll do me for a couple of days, and I'll just stay at the hotel that's here. No hotel, of course, at Cooper's Lake. I was introduced to the autocrat of the event, Duke Gavin Kilkenny, and his lovely lady, and they sort of turned around and said, "Well, we can't just leave you Australians hanging around." I said, "Australians?" She said, "Oh, we got this other one here too, Elfin." So they took me around to their camp, the autocrats camp, which they said, "Oh, we're the autocrats." I went, "Yeah, fine, okay, not a big problem." Went around to the autocrats camp, and they said, "If we're feeding you, then we're going to put you to work." I went, "Yeah, okay, that works too." And it was like the first night I got lost, because I thought it was just like a little walk around the camps, and we all know how big that is, not. And it took me 3 hours to find my way back up the hill. So now I tell people up the hill is home. And it was just like, I'm expecting like a 3-4 day, 1,500 people event, and it's like 5,500 and camp lights and camps as far as the eye can see, and battles on the battlefield, and they fit me with armor up and got me out in the battlefield. And it's and by day 4, when I had to go to get to the science fiction convention, I was going, I don't want to go. I want to come. I want to stay. I'm actually enjoying this. So, but I had to go. And so that was my first Penzic 19. I missed the following year. And then I went again in Penzic 21. And then pretty much every year or every second year. My wife says I'm allowed to go every second year, but I sometimes manage every year.
Has much changed since you first started going to Penzic to your most recent one, which was
well,
I imagine.
Where, and you've both been, so where basically you've got the Serengeti at the moment, which is the big area of tents where the merchants and everything are along there. Well, that was a car park. All the battlefield was pretty much half of it was a cornfield, and everyone really camped this side of the road. So it was just quite, very much down towards the lake itself. The infrastructure was, I think there was one section of paved road outside the barn. The shop was a very small shop at the front where the internet cafe is now. And the office for the Coopers, the whole control office, was in the back of that cafe, where we used to go and sit with Mac and Betty and have coffee, and Ed and myself, and chat with them. So it has expanded every year that Penzic run. I don't think there's been a year where they haven't put in some infrastructure, including a whole new sanitation and system and everything. So they spend, contrary to what some people believe, they spend a lot of money on that campground to take it from what used to be a farm property that you could camp on to an actual campground now with full facilities and power and water and sewage and the whole lot. So it's vastly changed from when I first went there.
The number of people, I assume, will have expanded. You said initially about 5,000 to, I think when I went was about 10,000, Lilia?
10,600 and something you were there. And the highest it's ever been, I think, is just 10,900 and something, and the squire who was late. So they always say, and the squire who was late, because he got there on the wrong weekend. He thought the last weekend was the middle weekend, and he went to check in just after they closed. So but so I've been going for since 19. What's now going to be 49, hopefully next year.
So this leads us to the question of, you're actually the mayor of Penzic.
I know. Yes, another Commonwealth first, 2-year mayor.
It must have been very hard in some ways to actually make the decisions about, like, postponing. I'm going to use the word postponing because that is the correct word.
Yep.
The postponement of Penzic this year till next year, when we have a clearer picture of how the pandemic is going. How did you as mayor kind of come up with the answers of, yes, we're going to do this? Because I understand there's a big team behind the actual running of it, and you're
massive.
basically just the chairman at the moment. Is that correct?
Yeah. Look, to say that I run Pennsic is really a falsehood. I have a team of spectacular people that run Pennsic. I have deputy mayors for each area. Every one of them are handpicked because they know their job and they know what they're doing, and they're very good at it. They are a fantastic group. They've managed the hell out of everything, including the Exchequer, the new Exchequer, who's just stepped in after Sir Edward passed away. So she's grabbed the gauntlet and run. Pennsic doesn't happen by itself, and people that have ever done any work at Pennsic will know that there's a whole background of about 200 people that actually run Pennsic. Oh, hello, that's cute.
So nice.
And the thing was that this year we'd planned for everything. I mean, we had emergency management plans for hurricanes. We had things for natural disasters and cyclones and floods, and who'd have thunk a pandemic? It was the only thing that we hadn't covered up on, right? So, but much to the credit of everyone that was there, we all just sat down and went, right. We planned, we had a look at what would possibly happen. We had a look at what the projected scope of what was happening. We're lucky we got people in the medical field and everything there on my team as well. I mean, one of my guys runs a nuclear power plant, for crying out loud. You don't reckon he's got responsibilities, right? So, so the thing is, what we did was we just staged it bit by bit. We had trigger points where we looked at what was going to happen. And if it hit certain trigger points, then we'd make certain decisions. And I mean, we did not want to postpone Pennsic. I mean, it's the last thing we wanted to do. But we worked very closely with the Coopers management themselves, and that's particularly the boys and the ladies there that are all running it now. And so every step we kept them informed, they kept us informed, so we knew what was going on in the county. And there's three major things that affected the change and the decision we had to make. The first one was the fact that we couldn't bring that many people together and guarantee the safety and not spreading it to those people that were there. There was no way in the world in this early stage we knew how to contain it. Secondly, we didn't want to bring all these people in from all over America, and possibly, as it turned out, we couldn't have from the world, but especially from all over America, and then actually cause a problem in the local area with all the local people we deal with as well, because that's also a concern, their safety. And then, of course, last was we had to look at, can we ride this through and push it through to next year and not have a severe impact financially on us? And we were lucky in all those things. All those things worked. To say it didn't have an impact on the Coopers, it does. It had a massive impact on their income. Impact on us wasn't as bad. I mean, we just transferred stuff. And because Pennsic's been very well financially managed over the past years, we've got more than enough in the bank to cover off on us missing this year without any issues that way. So it was a hard decision to make. I still think it was the right decision. I mean, it's not about me traveling there because I couldn't have anyway. And we had things in place for if that happened too. We had people to take over from me. It's not about one person. It's about a team. And so we carefully managed everything. We carefully staged. And one of the big things we did was we kept people informed as much as we could. We made it very public what our thinking was, so that people were in the move with us. They were walking with us, and our decision-making process wasn't a surprise to them. So, and to be completely transparent in those things, I think you just have to. So that's the way we ran it. And I'm lucky I've got good staff that come along for the ride and made all those decisions. So. And we're still planning. Of course, we just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago for next year, and we've got things in place for that as well.
See how things travel with the pandemic.
Yeah, and you've just got to look and watch. There's certain things culturally we can't do, particularly with American law. The individual rights of people are very different in some countries, so we've got to be very careful we don't step on those toes. So we very much liaise with particularly James and Josh and the Cooper family and Cooper management about how it's working in their area, because their health overlay is what we have to abide by. So that's how we work. So, but the team I've got is just professional people. I mean, this is not a shock to them. Some of them do this job every day, emergency management style of work. So they're very good at it. And we just sit down, we talk about it, we throw out the ideas, and then we come up with a plan, and that's it.
As the Australian coming across, does that, your way of thinking about things, does that sometimes cause a little bit of friction maybe with the
Yeah,
American?
occasionally. I'm I'm because well, you both know where I work. Because where I work, I'm working at, or did work up until a few months ago, at an operations center. So I'm used to making decisions, but I make a decision. So I listen, then I make a decision. It's not quite that way sometimes when you're working in the SCA, which I've got used to over the years. And I mean, one of the biggest things that Edward said to me, he says, make a decision, then talk to everyone else, then remake your decision. So that's pretty much what I do. And it is very much the case. I mean, sometimes you don't know the complexities of how people, like for instance, a particular area they have people that they work up to be in a position at Penzic, and that's the person they give you to liaise and do that particular role at Penzic. Well, of course, if you don't know that, you make your decision and you put whoever you think you want in there, and then they tell you, no, you can't do that. Okay. And then they explain one and go, all right, don't want to step on toes. It's and they're very good. I mean, it's everybody knows their job, so just got to be careful with. Sometimes I joke around a bit, probably too much. I tend to. I told people when I started, one of the big things I said, look, on my team, I don't care who you recruit under your deputy. I appointed all the deputy mayors. I don't care who you recruit under you, right? But I don't want any drama queens, right? I don't want people that, the world is ending today, because I'll be gone and so will you, right? Because I'm not going to tolerate that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And to their credit, they've gone, fine. You're out, you're in, and it's like, and they work well, and people get a bit stressed at times because it's 2 weeks, and people don't see it. It's really like a week and a half before that as well of organising it. But people are really good, and we've just got to be mindful that people work in different ways. They have different styles of working. They have different ways in which they think, and you just got to work that out very quickly. And luckily enough, working in the background of Penzic for so long, I've been able to pick some of the personalities and how they interlock or don't together. So I make sure that I move them around on the checkerboard to make sure they interlock and work well together. So I've been pretty lucky there.
So how many squires do you have? This is still on topic because the 2 times I've met a couple of your squires, and they're not Australians, they're Americans.
Yeah.
They have participated, a lot of your household over in America participate in the service of helping run Penzic.
Yeah.
I want to know if that is a requirement, or is it just you picking the people with the right personalities who will volunteer to do these kind of roles?
There's a couple of things. Right. First up, my household is, and everyone that knows me will tell you, my household is not a strict fighting household. We are not the Knights household that armors up and goes out there and fights. We like to do it. We like to get there, and you'll see pictures of us all together in the same gear and out there fighting, and it's fun. But my household is predominantly a service household, and that's what it's about. And people that want to become part of the household, that's what they want to do. People want to be my squires, got to understand that they're going to be doing service as well as fighting. And so I can't see any of my squires actually becoming knights at this stage, right? Unless they put a lot more effort into their fighting than they do into their service. I mean, I've already had one become a pelican, right? So I'm really happy with that. And but I mean, I let people move at their own pace, and their service is. People that join the household know that service is what we do, and that we're committed to doing service. And I don't care if you do it in the camp or whether you do it more widely within the community or even in your own group. I mean, for me, Penzic is I get to put, because of shift work and everything, I get to put all of my efforts into 2.5 weeks, of service. So I get to do 2.5 weeks of service in one lot where I'm not getting bothered, but I haven't got any other commitments to do other than service in SCA. And that's some of my household are like that too. Because they work, they do all sorts of weird jobs. They get to do, 2 weeks intensive service, so, and when you work it out, it's about every second weekend if you were doing it at home. So, and so that's what my household's about. My household's also all my friends. I mean, I don't just go around and grab squires. There is the story that I throw out my squires belts and proteges belts off the back of a golf cart, which isn't quite true. I happen to have bought them and was going past and said, look, you know, we'd already had the talk before. This is the belt that I promised you. And of course, people just saw me handing them out off the golf cart and saying, well, Gregory just drove past and threw them out to them on the golf cart and kept going. You know, we'd already had these discussions beforehand, and I was just going to get the belts, you know. So it was like, so that's the truth of it. But the other story is a lot better, a lot more fun.
But why stop a fantastic story from growing into its own? I tell people that you tried to sell me to a teacher, so it's a fine.
Yep, true. And if you hadn't squawked, I would have got a good price.
It'd only just been quiet long enough.
Yeah, that's right. So they all liked you, though. They were bidding high. It was going well.
So what is your proudest moment in the SCA, that one that you went, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening? Is it the drive-by peerages, or is it something else?
Look, it's hard to pick really one. I mean, obviously, I think your first Penzic, your first major event, I mean, my first event where I actually won the tournament was fantastic in Anyala. It was a two-handed weapons tournament against Rainadine of Tara, who was the two-handed specialist and expert in all of Australia, and he did this great Rainadine flip around to kill me as he did a full pirouette circle, and I just stepped to one side and went clunk, and that was it. I won. You know, it was like, whoa, you know, it's like beating the king. You know,
Yes.
My first event in the US that I went to thinking it was just a tourney, it turned out to be the Crown of the West event where I fought in. I went, oh, well, didn't know it was that, but it was good fun. I think watching my son walk out on the field for the first time and in his armour and everything, the proudest dad in the world, standing there going, no, don't, oh, you didn't do, you know, fighting everything for him, you know. It's like, and watching him organise a tournament at Penzic for all the new the first generation kids, which was fantastic. I mean, those are traditional things. Yeah, all those sorts of things. I mean, fighting people and, you know, just having a good time and meeting a lot of different people and being inspired by them, I suppose. So that's really what it's about.
Oh, Tani, do you have a question? Because I could talk to Greg for hours.
I was thinking something, but it's gone out of my mind. That's all right.
So I want to ask you about your heroes, because obviously you don't feel like you're a hero in the SCA.
Oh, hell no.
Most people who inspire don't, right? But I'm sure there are people that have inspired you and that are your heroes in the SCA. Can you list a few of them for us, or and the reasons why?
I think, yeah, and I'll miss people. I know I'll miss people. It's going to be horrible because there's so many people that I owe so much to in the SCA, from Duke Kevin Peregrine, who took me to my first ever Crown tournament in San Francisco when I didn't know it was, who inspired me with his straightforward and honesty. Sir Brucey, Sir Brand of Lochiel, my first night. Sir Peter de Gaunt, those sort of people that you know put me there. And a weird story about Peter. I mean, we were sitting there when I got offered knighthood, and we're sitting in the little office out to the side of the hall, and they said to me, Peter says, "Oh, the king would like to have a word to you." And the Enderman stood up and he said, we'd like to offer some difference to your name. And I went, oh, that sounds fine. What are we talking about? And he says, we want to say that it should be Gregory of Lochswan, KSCA. And I went, Cassar? I don't want to add Cassar on the end for, you know. And then it sort of dawned on me. I was like, oh, crap. I know what it is now. So I stood up and I stood down and then got up and down a few times and was all excited. And then I remember that I had a horrible moment then because I was on the Queen's Guard. And a horrible moment turned around and I went, oh, but that means I won't be able to be on the Queen's Guard. And they went, no, you can't be a knight on the Queen's Guard. And they must have seen the decision point in my, because it was important, but Queen's Guard was important too. I had a commitment. I'd given a commitment, and I'm that person. I've given a commitment here. Yeah. Let's wait until that commitment's finished, then we'll look at this, you know. And they went, no, make the decision. I went, okay. So I took knighthood, and then later on I got given the Queen's Guard baldric back, as the eternal member of the Queen's Guard. So that was really cool. But the funniest part was when I'm flicking through the service orders, and Peter's going, "Oh, here's the different, we got the different criteria. What's going to happen?" He said, "This is a service for the knighthood, and you can change words. And oh, that's the one for the master. We don't need to look at that." And I said, "Well, hang on a second. I haven't made up my mind yet whether I want to be a master or a knight." And the look on his face, I swear, he was like he was going to have a cow, you know. And it was like, and I said, "I'm not joking." And he and I had to ring my wife first, and then I had to ring Sir Bran and get his okay. And so yeah, they were special times. But there's been so many, those sort of things that have happened, and so those sort of things inspire me when you see those people. And I think Sir Ruslan and Sir Wulfgar really inspired me because they're both masters. Sorry, Sir Ruslan, so Master Wulfgar and Master Ruslan, should I say, of the Order of Chivalry. And I actually sat down and had a long talk with them about what it was to be a master, why they chose being a master over being a knight. And it's actually very simple. It's not as complex as people make it out to be. It's not that they don't want to be in fealty. It's just a range of different things. So they inspire me with their chivalry because, quite honestly, some of their chivalry's been better than some of the knights I've seen around the place. And it's just a myriad of people that I could pick out. But I think over more recent years, the person that's inspired me the most has definitely been Sir Edward. He sat me down and we went through things. We didn't really know one another to start with, but then we become almost like brothers towards the end. And it's like he led me through the last probably 10 years of my SCA life with his courtesy, his kindness, his wisdom, and how to think about things and how to do things. And so, so I would say they're my inspirations. I mean, there's been bucket loads of Queens of the West and Queens of Lochac that have been outstanding inspirations. I think we picked the best Queens out of the rest of the known world, to be honest with you. We just seem to have lovely ones and nice ones, which is really cool. So they always inspire me because you sit there and you watch them on the throne and it's like, yeah, this is cool, So
perpetual Queen's Guard of the West.
Yeah, they call me the Eternal Guardsman. I'm actually in the book, apparently. the Hand Over the Crown book. I'm actually written up in the book.
Are you the only one that holds that?
Yes, yeah. It's the Eternal, and my baldric is green on the top and red on the bottom for the Eternal Queen's Guard.
Right. I have never heard of it myself.
It's in the Book of the West, apparently. I haven't actually looked at it, to be honest. They said it's in there. It explains the Eternal Guardsman. So, and that's one of the very proud things I am.
You want to tell us the story of how you became noticed and decided this honor was bestowed upon you?
Well, I mean, it's the Queen's Guard getting it, or the actual some of the reasoning behind it, apparently.
Some of the reasoning behind it.
Okay. Well, apparently I saved a queen at one stage, and you don't think about that at the time because she's not the queen at the time. She's just another fighter. We're fighting in the woods battle at Penzic, and I was on the red side. She was on the blue side, and we're in a thicket of woods, really tough woods. And she'd been hit a couple of times, and she said good, and went down and on her knees, and then she said good again. But I could see from the angle that she couldn't fall backwards and fall over because there was a tree stump behind her like this big, and she's trying to fall, and there's people dead on either side of it. She's trying to fall, and of course the rest of my line keeps hitting her, and I'm going, no, this can't happen. So I just jumped across, and all I did was just jumped across, threw my shield over my head, and went, we'll just wait here until I remember yelling, just stay still until they call hold, Anyway, so they called hold eventually, and I got her, lifted her up and said, yeah, okay, yeah, she's fine. And I said, all right. And then she toddled off and I said, that's fine. And next minute, probably that evening, I got a call to go to Antia. Now, the King of Antia had wanted me to come up there because I had bagpipes, and I'd met the king before anyway. And I thought, I'll play bagpipes. I'll take them along with me. Not a problem. And I walked in there, and I got called up through the gate and called up to the king. And I went, and as I'm walking up, I'm looking at the lady sitting next to me, going, I've seen you before. Oh, I know who you are. So it's like, uh-oh. And so I got given an award from the King of Antia for saving his queen. So I think apparently that letter then went back the other way across to the West Kingdom, and that formed part of the reason why I was knighted. So, yeah, and then I put on the Queen's Guard because I tended to guard queens apparently. And I think also that Megan really didn't want to get rid of me. I was on her guard right when we changed over, and she was not happy with the fact that I was going off the guard, the Queen's Guard, because I'd been the Eternal Guardsman at that stage for a while. And she asked me, she said, like, how do you feel? I said, I'm really not happy about it. It's really torn me. And I'm going to take my fealty to Lochac because that's my kingdom. I said, but it's really hurting not being able to be your guardsman or the Queen's Guardsman. And so they said, I think it was Agro, myself, and Guinevere and a few others. So you can swear fealty to the West Kingdom, save only your fealty to Lochac, and we're keeping Gregory on the Queen's Guard because we're not letting him go. And I went, cool, that works for me. So the Queens remember it when they read it, and I meet a lot of the Queens, and I think they're chuffed to sort of. I always try and bring them something, a rose or just something, do something, and give them something to say, I really appreciate it, and try and do something for them, help set up or take them around Pennsic because have golf cart will travel. So yeah,
so look after the Queens, and I know I appreciate that what you did for me when I was over there, and I'm sure you looked after Lilia as well. Because
I wasn't a queen, so you didn't have to look after me.
You sure got looked after. I'm very grateful of.
It's my job.
But you do it with such grace and such courtesy.
It's my job. I mean, that's what we do for one another. I mean, it's not just me. I mean, really, it's really about people just taking care of one another in the society and the SCA, and that's what I try to do. I mean, anybody that arrived at an airport at, oh my God, 1:00 in the morning and get some hotel room on a hill slope, it's like hell, I might add, right, to load your car on. But that was funny as hell. But yeah, it was, you just do that sort of thing for one another. And I'm just fortunate enough that I can do that and help people out because that's just what I enjoy doing. People said to me before, what do you want out of Pennsic? I said, nothing. I just want to see people go home and have a good time and say, we had a good time. That's all I want. That makes me happy,
So I'm going to ask you something and you can say like no to the answer. Right. You've been on the Pennsic team, like autocrating team, and for many years. And because of your skill set mundanely, you've seen some horrific things. And I want to ask you about what the best things that you have seen have been at Pennsic, because we all know behind the scenes there are somebody and people who are dealing with the yucky side of any social group.
Yeah.
But we need to know what keeps them inspired and keeps them playing so that we can ensure that they get to see the positives, not just the negatives. And that's why I'm asking, what are your positives, like the highlights of your time? Because I know with your mundane life as a police officer, you obviously observe people a lot.
And to watch them. I take my hat off. There's one group of people out there that I really take my hat off to. And I mean, there's a lot of people that do a lot of things, don't get me wrong. But, that battlefield does not set itself up. And those hay bales do not get there by themselves and miraculously walk there overnight and position themselves for the battle the next day. And the crowns of the East, the Ethelmark and the Mid have an annoying habit sometimes, depending on how much they've had to drink the night before and how much they thought it was a great idea, over a couple of bottles, to change the battle, which of course means all the hay bales have got to change. And the battlefield coordinator and that group of people that get out there from the youngest kids that I've seen, like 6 and 7, 3 or 4 of them on a hay bale, moving a hay bale, so that these guys can walk out guys and girls can walk out of the battlefield and go, hey, thanks for the battle. They're the unsung heroes. They're the ones that big pile of hay bales you see at the back of the battlefield at the beginning of Pennsic, and then it miraculously appears back up there at the end of Pennsic. They're the ones that move them all. And yep. There's no little fairies that do it during the night. It's all these same people hoofing these hay bales, and they're not light, and if it rains, they're worse. And if they start to break apart, they're more difficult to move, right? So and they're doing them all the time. And in between battles, you know, you'll see different people, fighters, standing there going, "Oh, come on, let's get on with the battle. You know, what's taking so long?" Well, if you put your armor off for 5 seconds and get your ass out there and move a couple of hay bales, it'd start quicker. You know, so they're the people that are doing the hard yards. I mean, it's all those behind the scenes people. I mean, the coopers, the people that come and work there, and fair enough, they get paid to come and work. Some of the people that work there. But my God, do they keep an eye on what's going on? Do they make sure that grass is mowed beautifully? Do they make sure that your campsite is drained properly? Do they make sure that people have power? If it breaks at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're on an oxygen machine, they're out there fixing the wiring at night time. You've got all your medical staff there, which are now all professionals, and they're working shift work to make sure everybody's safe and okay. You've got even the Pennsic public safety people driving around, and they're not driving around just to be in a golf cart at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're driving around because they're just keeping an eye on things to make sure everyone's not too drunk to get home. You know, it's there's a myriad of those sort of people. I think watching some of the older peers, I mean, some of the older peers have really got a knack of just finding the right moment in time and handing something to somebody, especially a kid or a young person, for what they do. And it might be a ring off their finger. It might be, you know, it might be a bauble out of their pocket, but they go, "Look, thanks for doing that. That was really good. I saw you do that. That was really chivalrous. That was really well done." And it might be any one of a range of things that person does, but then they make them feel special. They make them feel that moment in time has frozen, and that part of Pennsic will be remembered by them until the day they die. That's important that we do that. Those are the things that make a difference. You know, that's what inspires people to keep coming back and keep doing things and keep being in the SCA. And so that's what we try to do. I mean, and I've seen people doing that all over the place at Pennsic, and all over the place in the SCA. I mean, the children's fight. I mean, as much as I hate getting kicked in the ghoulies every time we do the children's fight at Rowaney, because it happens, right? Those kids have got no mercy whatsoever, right? And that's why people start throwing their armor off. I go, "You've got to be kidding. I'm keeping mine on because I know what happens," right? They are good, but it serves a purpose, you know, and it's great to do those sorts of things, especially in today's society where there's so many negatives. Just going out and preparing the halls before a feast, you know, the people that turn up and do that, the people that, you know, that cook the feast, the people that order crack, the people that stay behind and clean it up, they're the people that matter in the society. Not they're wearing this stuff, you know. It's those people that matter because they're the ones that make the society. So, and that's all I do. I just do my bit of service, and that's my bit of service is just organising other people to do their service.
Delegation. You're a delegation.
I like getting stuck in, but I mean, I get told off all the time at the moment. So okay. Just because you do a 24-hour shift because there's no one there on the watch, they get narky with you, tell you to go to bed, especially your own squires. You know?
Well, I have stories to tell you about yours doing the same thing.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah, it's like that. So
if you didn't have the SCA, what would you do? Like, what would your focus be on?
I was very much into science fiction, film and literature side of stuff beforehand, and into military wargaming with little figurines. So I played with toy soldiers ever since I've been little and got older. So that would be probably my focus, apart from my family, obviously, which always comes first. But that would have been my focuses. But you know, it's I think the SCA was just one of those things that came along in a moment in time, and I could have gone right past it and not missed it, but then I wouldn't have met all the wonderful people that I've met. And I mean, that was never more poignant to me than a couple of years ago when Steph came to Pennsic, my wife. And she's not SCA. Steph doesn't do SCA. She has some costumes and stuff. And this time, because Mrs. Cooper and the Coopers had said, "Look, come and stay. We'll give you a place to stay," because she hates camping. Come and stay. We'll give you a place to stay. That's all right. She came along, and there's always been not a battle, but a bit of a you're going to Pennsic again. You're away for two or 3 weeks. You know, I'm not going to see you for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's always been a bit of an issue. But she knows it's my relaxation. So anyway, so she came along. She said, "Well, okay, I'll come to Pennsic with you this time, and I'll stay at Pennsic for the 2 weeks." And she went to classes. She did trolls. She kept doing trolls. She loved it. She met a lot of different people there at Penzic. Came out and went to a lot of different things, but particularly around troll and the Penzic Academy, where she started to learn glass beading and all this sort of stuff. And because she's into art, doing art types, crafty stuff anyway. And the most important thing happened at the end, where she turned around and she said to me when we were going back on the plane, she said, I always wondered really what you saw with Penzic, and that she knew the Coopers, they'd visited us and we'd stayed with them and that sort of thing. But she said, I didn't realise there were so many nice people as there were at Penzic. And I went, because her first experience at the SCA was totally the opposite, with people criticising her nylon dress that she spent like 10 hours making, and she wasn't speaking forsoothly, and so she said, no, And then to get the exact opposite, she still doesn't like camping, but that's not going to change. But she's met a whole new group of SCA people that are very, very different to the first group she initially met in the very, very, very early days of SCA in Anyala. And I'm glad about that, because that's made it easier for me. But as I said to one people, they said, "Oh, your wife, she's really nice. This is fantastic. She's going to come back again." I'm going, this is my bloody Penzic. This is my holiday. It's like, but I love it. I love it there. I love showing her off, because people didn't think she existed for years. You married? Yep. It's my wife, Stephanie. No, you're not. You're just making that up. Now I've actually shown it. There's a Stephanie. Thank you.
So the next year that you're there without her, we should make you like a little effigy of her so you can keep her in your belt.
That's what she does that on the phone. No, but she's hoping to be there, barring COVID restrictions. She's hoping to be there next year as well.
Lovely.
So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, where they want to make a head troll, and no, no. She's just happy to sit behind the desk and work in there. She loves it. She loves meeting people. So
yeah.
So we're about to run out of time. I would like you to tell us your favorite story when you've been drinking at a campfire that you like to tell.
Oh goodness, favorite campfire story. I think the favorite story, and I'll try and be quick. We're going to Penzic actually. It was Alpha of Attica, Chuck, who was in the back of the car, and we were driving to Penzic from Washington, and we stopped off a little shop, got a little Amish salad for Alpha in the car, and got something to eat. And we were in the mid, but we'd done the back roads. We'd gone the back way into Penzic, the back roads through Pennsylvania. So we're in nowhere, crossroads, Pennsylvania, and of course Alpha didn't get a spoon to eat the Amish salad with, so he's eating it with his fingers, and it's gone everywhere in the car. And I said, for crying out loud, stop dropping it all over the car. How about we'll just pull into the next little service station, which will be somewhere up the road here, and we'll get one. So anyway, we saw this like garage sale, but they have the front verge sales in the US on the side of the road. We thought, must have a spoon there. Pulled in there, got out of the car, walked around. They had two tables. And on the first table, there was this little stuffed kangaroo sitting there, like sitting there looking at us. And I went, do, 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 do. So I'm going, holy mackerel. And so we're all looking at the kangaroo, and we're laughing at one another, talking to one another, laughing. And this little girl walks up, she goes, hello, that's a kangaroo. And it comes from, where does it come from, Mummy? It comes from Australia, darling. Oh, it comes from Australia. So, of course, being us, we couldn't resist it. Say, well, we come from Australia too. And we started talking to them, telling her how kangaroos eat in our front yards, and we have kangaroos as pets. And next minute, she grabs this little kangaroo and she walks off with it, because it's not getting sold. It's got a whole new meaning in her life now. Alpha clipped a little a koala bear to its ear and that. So it's like, it's a whole new meaning. And we're just about to drive off, and the guy says, oh, didn't you see anything you like? The husband went, no, we're just after a plastic spoon for my friend here, because for TD's. He says, oh, do you want a plastic spoon? We said, that'd be great. He says, how many do you want? And I said, oh, just one or two in case he breaks one. He says, do you want a packet of them? Do you want some knives and forks? Because I work in the plastic spoon factory, which is just over the back. We get in the car, we're driving down the road with a bag full of plastic spoons. And you think that's it. Nothing else as weird is going to happen. Next minute, there's a big sign. It says Corn Fest, and all these people sitting out under these things eating corn. And Alpha goes, hey, let's go down there and have the corn fest. Says, no, we're not, because children will come out of the corn with their eyes glowing. And, we're going to where people are normal. We're going to Penzic, right? So
where people are normal.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that's
That's right. No, that's a true story. That's a true travel story.
Thank you so much for participating in our interviews.
Yes,
I know I
thank you.
kind of winked you into it,
That's
but
okay.
I do appreciate it. For me, you have always been the most down-to-earth, friendly, approachable person that I have met, even when I made you kneel in a puddle when I was queen.
That's okay.
Oh,
That's
you
my job.
weenie.
But all of the little antidotes and things that happen when I'm around you build my experience. So I would like to thank you personally for adding to it with this interview.
Thank
Altani,
you.
would you like to say some words?
Yes, thank you, Lilia. I think I mentioned earlier, I've always found your generosity that you have given to so many people, and especially the queens and the ladies of Lochac, as a principality, as when I was a young princess so many years ago, and then as a queen recently. I can't fault you in anything. You are such
I have
a
my faults.
lovely.
Trust me. Ask Steph. She'll tell you.
I'm sure I could ask Steph, but we won't. You're such a wonderful person and somebody too that can inspire so many people. As I
Oh,
said,
thank
with
you.
your generosity and the service that you have provided as a knight, as a counselor, as a pelican, and as who you are. You are a boon to our kingdom. Thank you.
Ah, you make me sad.
I'm
I'm
sorry,
humble. I mean,
sad.
it's like I don't do anything other people don't do. I'm just probably a little bit more upfront about it, probably.
It's what we see and what we appreciate.
Oh, thank you.
So on that note, I would like to say if anybody does travel to Penzik next year, please take a moment to see if there's anything that you can do to help others and to volunteer. Just a little bit where you are can make a big difference to those who've spent weeks, months, and now years
One
planning.
shift.
One shift, just volunteer for one shift to planning to make Penzik work. If you like this interview, please like our page, tell your friends, and share our interviews. The known world is getting a little bit closer and a little bit bigger at the same time. So please stay safe in these times. For those of you in the USA and any other country that is celebrating, happy Thanksgiving, and may your afternoon with your family be wonderful.
And the Penzik medallions for next year are spectacular, let me tell you, because they're the only thing I've got to have any say about. They may or may not have a kangaroo somewhere in them. I don't know.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Take care. Thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye.